Can you believe it? Dreamers Podcast is turning 1 year old on May 16th. To celebrate, I am hosting a live online event May 16th at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. For all the details, go to howtodream.co/year. I hope to raise lots of money for Give Kids the World charity and make a lot of fun memories. See you then.
This is the Dreamers Podcast, where dreamers share their stories to inspire you. Now, join host Joe Pardo as he interviews a dreamer who's living their dreams.
Hey dreamers, I'm Joe Pardo, and today I'm talking with Andrew Camero, who is making his dreams come true by living every day in the moment and serving people the best way he can. Glad to have you on the show, Andrew.
Hey Joe, thank you so much for having me, and I'm definitely living the dream, and I'm so blessed and thankful to be on your show.
Well, I'm just thankful to be on your show just a couple weeks ago at andrewcamero.com.
Yeah, definitely. That's going to be should be out by the time this podcast come out, and we talk about a lot of really cool stuff on there.
Yeah, it was a really great time. And I was surprised with all the different questions that you had that I had, some of which I had not been asked yet to this point.
Yeah, what Tony Robbins says that I found really interesting is that the questions that you ask yourself determine the quality of your life. And so ever since I've heard that quote, I started asking myself better questions and trying to find out better questions to ask my audience. So it's just really interesting.
Well, you definitely do a good job with pre-planning out for your show. Probably a lot better than I do.
Oh, thank you.
Actually, I know for a fact you do it better than I do as far as pre-planning. So, Andrew, why don't you go in and give us some background about yourself?
Well, by day, I'm a software engineer at a retail company working on the back end of their website, processing data, working with Java and CSS, HTML, a little bit of the front end as well. And by nighttime, I have a podcast called the Dream Life Podcast. And I'm also working on a relationships course on the side. And lastly, I'm just a wonderful husband and just so blessed that I have an awesome wife. And actually, it's going to be our 1 year anniversary next week, May 3rd.
Oh, congratulations.
Oh, thank you.
It's funny, you're self-professed awesome husband.
Yeah, definitely.
No, I love it.
Whatever you say is what you think, and whatever you think is probably what you are. And so, a lot of the things that's in your subconscious mind and how you feel, it first cultivates in your mind, or cultivates as a dream. And there's a quote by Napoleon Hill. It says, "Every great leader from the dawn of civilization down to the present was a dreamer." And so everything that happens starts off as a dream, or just as a moment or a thought in your mind. And so whatever you think about yourself, you become. And so I highly believe that. And I have affirmations every morning that I do that help me try to be a better person, especially a better person to my wife and a better person just to serve others.
So what got you started doing a podcast?
Interesting. So like everyone else, I listened to, Pat Flynn and John Lee Dumas. I can't remember what got me into listening to them, but I started listening to them and I saw how much money they were making. And I was like, oh, that would be just so awesome to do. But, they were making $70,000 a month, $300,000 a month. And of course, once you first see that, it's just so inspiring. And what drove me to make that podcast was first, the money. Money isn't everything, but it's definitely something that helps us get to our end goal, which is, freedom, maybe quitting our job, enjoying everything. And it's just something that we use as leverage. And so I'll have to admit, at first it started off with the money, but then after that, my vision and the mission changed for the podcast. And so right now my mission is to help people achieve their dream lives by showing how others have grown their career, their business, their relationships, their body, their mind, and then remind everyone to enjoy the journey to their dream life. Because once we get there, it's a lot of people just check it off like it's on their bucket list and they move on to the next thing. Well, we need to enjoy that journey, that walk to our dream life, even if it's just a short walk or a long walk. There's so many things to see, so many beautiful leaves and flowers to look at, even if they're failures as well. And then I tell everyone to share their dream life, to give people hope, to inspire, and to encourage others, to let them know that it's truly possible. And my my motto for that is achieve it, enjoy it, and share it. And so that's kind of how I got into podcasting, and that's how my motto changed from the beginning until now. And I'm definitely growing more and more as I podcast more. And right now I'm using my podcasting as, just number one, to network around and learn more about other people and have them share their dreams. And number two, just to get better at speaking, to get better at asking questions so that, I can just be better at presenting myself.
It's funny that you mentioned Pat Flynn and John Lee Dumas. I actually have never listened to either of their shows. I mean, I listened to one episode of John Lee Dumas's show, but his show is actually was the show that inspired me to get this show started. And I knew a bunch of other podcasters personally at the time. I just didn't know what I would talk about, but all those were like topic shows. And when I heard about an interview based show, I was like, that's when the gears started going. I'm like, oh man, I could totally do this. And, it's cool that he was making all this money. And, within about just under 2 months or so, I realized that the money wasn't just going to start raining out of the sky just because I bought a microphone and knew how to upload, content to the internet. So it really turned to that point of like, hey, this is a platform that I'm building. And at the time I didn't even realize that was the case. It was only over time, in the months that followed, like that I realized like, hey, I'm not building something that's necessarily going to turn this major profit, but really just a platform to put me out into the world and connect me with people that I'd have no business connecting with otherwise.
Yeah, and I totally agree. And that's exactly kind of where I was. But I started as a topical based podcast. So I would just pick topics, whatever I've learned in the past, and start podcasting over them. Well, now I'm slowly transitioning to a more of an interview based podcast where I'm talking to others, learning more about how others work and the patterns. And one of the big things that I noticed about, John Lee Dumas and Pat Flynn is just how much work they put into it and how much they've invested into their podcast. It's kind of like how we see our parents have a really, really nice house. And then right when we get married, we want to have that exact same thing. But what we don't realize, what we see first is that we see the outcome. We see whatever is pretty, whatever has been cultivated, whatever, all the hard work that's been put in, we see the results of that. And we don't see the behind the scenes work, the investments they made, the time that went in. So our parents probably put in, several $100,000s to get where they are now, to get that nice home, that nice chandelier, stairs, maybe a big backyard. And that came over years of hard work. It could have been 15 years, it could have been 30 years, maybe even, 40 years. And that's something that, John Lee Dumas put in. He quit his job, put in his time and effort. He spent, I think, 10 grand and 9 months to start this podcast, and just a ton of hard work. And I feel like that's what I've been learning in my podcast, that everyone sees the nice things, like on Facebook, Instagram. You always see the high success rate or the highest results, the prime highlights of their life, but no one really sees the hard work they put in and the failures that they've gone through.
Yeah, I mean, some of them are now, like, recently have talked about that, the actual day-to-day drudgery that they had to go through to get to where they're at. And that's great and all, but, I feel like sometimes it's hard for people to connect with that message, especially when you look at their websites and you're like, oh, yeah, I mean, it was a struggle then, but, like, look at what it paid off now. And the reality is most people are never going to make that kind of money, especially not in podcasting. And not that it's impossible, but it does take an awful lot of work, perfect timing, or at least impeccable timing, and just and a little bit of luck, having the right connections at the right time.
Yeah, and I totally agree. And so I'm working as a software engineer at a retail company. Well, when I was in college, I was working on my bachelor's degree in computer science and engineering, and I was in a senior design group, and we were out late testing our autonomous robot, which was our senior class project, and it was just super awesome. It was able to move on its own. It had sensors. It had pretty nice wheels, so it can roll over everything. And at that time, I finally got this call on my phone. I felt my phone vibrate. I was very stressed on, all these courses I have to take. I wanted to graduate on time, meaning 4 years, and I wanted to finish this project up. And so I felt my phone vibrate. I answer it, and I talked, and it was my mom. And so I kind of froze in place, and my eyes started to water a little bit. And she was actually diagnosed with stage 4 colon cancer, and this was in May of 2012, a couple years ago. And it was just a really, really tough time for me. And I knew I couldn't handle all the pressure on my own, and that I needed something bigger to go for, to live for. And so I'm Christian, and so I trusted in God, if you will, and to heal my mother and get me through college. And actually, I put in a ton of work that 2 months before I graduated, and I actually got a job offer at where I'm working now. And it paid off so much. It was like sleepless nights and everything like that. And 8 months later, my mom was, completely healed thanks to, God, chemotherapy sessions, surgery. And I'm just so thankful for that. And one of the reasons that I share that story with you is that whatever you're going through, cancer, struggle with your family, it cannot, or it's all limited. It cannot cripple love. It cannot shatter hope. It cannot corrode faith. It cannot kill your spirit, and it cannot silence the courage that you have to live your dream life. And I just want to let you know this because, you're not alone with your struggles, and whatever hard work you put in, it will definitely pay off later, even if it's just one baby step at a time. Another thing about baby steps, I know that's a huge Dave Ramsey thing, is take baby steps. And one of the stories that he tells is the tortoise and the hare, where at the end of the book, the tortoise always wins. And it took me, I got the point to that, but I didn't really get the point. And it was just like an aha moment, oh, the tortoise always wins. It was yesterday. I was at home for lunch, and I'm trying to build this relationship course, and I've been taking these small baby steps towards it. And then I got more done in the past week, just doing 5 to 10 minute intervals of work, than the past month of trying to get everything done at once. And so those baby steps help me overcome, barriers in my life.
Well, first off, I'm happy to hear about your mother, being able to battle through cancer and survive, especially stage 4 and colon cancer, no less.
Yeah, and it was crazy because stage 4 is kind of like you should probably write your will now, or you should get your will ready. And it was just a tough time, and so we're just so blessed. And thanks, Joe, for mentioning that.
Oh, no problem. I mean, I've had my dad dealt with cancer about a decade ago, and that was stage 3, really close to stage 4. But for him, it was testicular cancer, and it was never. I don't know. I guess I was younger at the time, but it never really occurred to me I guess the impact that it really could have had. Mainly because of the high success rate of being able to cure it 10 years ago was something like 90% if you catch it before stage 4. So, we were it was a long road for him, but it wasn't, I guess, as much of a battle, or took as much of a toll on the family as I guess it could have.
And once you get really close to death like that, if it's a family member, or if it's yourself, a lot of people just say, live in the moment. Don't take things for granted, live life to the fullest, blah 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 blah. But it doesn't really hit you until someone close to you has either gone really close to death or is almost passed away. And so once that moment hit, after got through it, I've noticed that every day should be a day that we should live life to the fullest and love others and just show others that we care and just help everyone live their dreams. And so it's just really awesome that I get it from my dad, and he's just such a giving person. He always puts everyone else's needs in front of his. So every day at the hospital, my mom was there for those couple months, I can't remember. He was there every single day, caring for her every need, and just sleeping in those really uncomfortable hospital chairs.
I know those all too well. And going to your point about baby steps, it's hard sometimes when people don't even know what step they should take. But when you break down the idea of what a little step or a baby step is, just Googling something and finding out, like, okay, what are the terms I should be looking for? What is this specifically called? And all that those are steps towards making it, a reality. So it could be as small as just doing a Google search to get started.
Exactly. And I totally agree with that. One of the baby steps I start off with for like my next week's task, I meet with an accountability partner twice a week. And one of the baby steps that we take is, right after the meeting, go on your calendar and just set out time to whenever your goals that you want to hit are. So there's just really small baby steps. If it's just Googling something, sometimes you might not get it done. For me, it has to be on my calendar sometimes, even if it's as small as like Googling this or researching, the customer, or researching this book or reading this book. I have to set it on my calendar, or sometimes I might forget.
No, that's totally understandable. I go through my calendar, my email list, my reminders list are all three things that I use to make sure that I don't forget things, because and sometimes my notes on my phone as well. I'll throw things in there, bigger ideas or something to that effect, and then go back to it later and expand on it, usually into Evernote from there, just so that I always have it, even if I can't act on it for a couple days, a couple weeks, or even months later. I still have the idea there, and I didn't have to clutter my mind with these thoughts, or hey, I have to remember to do this or do that. And that's I don't know about you, but I would imagine so. One of the things that always irks me is when someone asks me, "Well, can you remind me to do this?" And I'm like, dude, you have a $600 computer in your pocket. You need me to remember for you? Like, that's what the computer is for. That's what your phone is for.
Yeah, you can send yourself an email, you can text message yourself, you can put it on your calendar. I mean, you
reminders, notes. I mean, the list is
exactly.
endless of ways that you could remember to do something.
One of the things that my coworkers make fun of me is that I love to write things down, like on sticky notes. And one time I took out a sticky note, I wrote a reminder down, and I slapped it on the back of my phone. And I pulled out my phone one time, and my coworker was like, "Really? You put a sticky note on the back of your phone when your phone has a ton of different ways to keep track of what you want to do? I think it even has like an app for sticky notes." And so I was like, "Hey, whatever, it works for me." Yeah, so just getting that little reminder always helps you a lot. And one of the things that stops me from doing, like, releasing things is everything has to be perfect. But sometimes we just have to stop and see if we're 80% of the way there, because 80% is better than nothing, than 0%. And so we might as well release that 80% and go ahead and move forward with that, rather than hoping and waiting until it gets really, really perfect.
I agree. As long as you're not talking about a major release, like a music album or a book or something to that effect.
Yeah.
A piece of artwork. Yeah, you definitely can put stuff out sooner than needing it to be complete. How did your family take it when you told them you were going to start a podcast and work towards this independent lifestyle?
Well, at first, I told my wife about it, and she was a little bit hesitant and very supportive of me, of course. But she was very concerned about, after if I transition off of where I'm working now, where I'm making a good salary, and it's very, what is the word for it? Secure, safe, and there's always a paycheck coming in. One of the concerns was, the money. If the money wouldn't come in, then that would be tough to transition. And so what I've done with that is I got a mentor for, helping me set goals, getting a plan to actually reach whatever goal I want to, whatever dollar amount, whatever subscriber, whatever goals I need to for my business to be able to transition over. And so her first reaction was, how are you going to do this? Because my wife is very detail oriented. And so she wanted a plan set out, and she's an accountant. So she wanted the numbers set out as well. And so I had to come up with, some plans on that and just how to do that there. And so, but right now, I'm just so thankful that she's so supportive of me, and that, she pushes me forward, she carries me up. And one of the quotes that I can't remember who said it, but they said, but behind every strong leader or behind every strong man, there's a supportive wife. And I'm not saying that to put the wife on a lower scale or anything like that. I'm just saying that a supportive wife is huge to a man that's really ambitious and that wants to, help others and get people there. And then after that, I told my parents about it, and they were a little bit iffy, but they, supported me, and they just wanted me to be happy and go ahead and move on and do what I want to do and do what I love.
Well, I couldn't agree more about that statement. But part of it is, it's not just the idea that it's your wife. It's like, it's a person, right? It's a person that could say, no, you're really crazy. Like, what you're saying is so far away from reality that, if somebody else can't see your vision at all, well, then it's, maybe it's time to reevaluate that vision. But, you should have somebody that understands you enough, that would understand that, like, what's coming out of your mind, it could be reality, and it could be your reality. And you just, at that point, you just have to be willing to put the work in and have a wife that's supportive enough that isn't just saying that they're supportive, but actually helping you in so many ways by reinforcing the idea that you're going to be right, and you're going to make it, and everything's going to be okay, on top of all the other things that your partner needs to be able to do.
Exactly. And one of my biggest goals right now is just to get to a point where my wife can potentially, be a stay-at-home mom and take care of the kids, and she won't have to worry about the money thing, and we can just use money for living, our dreams and helping others live their dreams, and having a good foundation for our kids so that they can live their dreams.
It sounds like a solid plan. I live a very similar life.
Yeah, we always want to do better. I think we do more for others than we do ourselves. And so having that extra step for doing something for others just pushes us to a new level.
Andrew, what's been the biggest roadblock so far with going into your own independent entrepreneurial lifestyle?
My biggest roadblock would actually be myself, my mind, my doubts of, where I want to be. And so I think it was about two or 3 weeks ago where I just got into this weird, like, distraught phase. I was feeling a little bit depressed, and I felt like, things weren't moving as fast as I wanted to move. And my mind just downward spiraled. And if you will, I went into a self-sabotage type phase where I would tell myself, you're not good enough. You're never going to be good enough. You're going to keep on failing, blah, blah, blah. And all this stuff that kind of crowded my mind. And I just sat there and listened to it. And it brought me down for like a couple days. And I finally got out of it where I noticed again, going back to Tony Robbins' thing, where he says the questions that you ask yourself determine the quality of your life. And I went into like my mind palace per se, and I started talking to myself. I sat on the couch and I was like, "Hey, Andrew, what's stopping you? What's got you down? Why do you think you're gonna fail?" One of the answers was, "Well, I think that once I get there, then I'll have to deliver on all this stuff. I'll have to do all of these other things. I might not be able to deliver at the best that I want to deliver." And so that made me really scared. And another question I asked was, well, what can we do right now, or what can we do now to help move that process forward and to get us off the couch and get us a little bit less scared? And so many different things piled in my mind. I started writing down really, really quickly on all the different things that came in my mind, and it was just so awesome. And one of the things that came to mind was having a trigger. So having a trigger for each moment that you start to feel yourself going into that state of distraughtness or feeling of failure or depression, having a trigger to snap you out of whatever you're doing. And one of my triggers is actually to take a cold shower, which is unheard of to most people. And so I'll turn the water on super cold and just jump right in. And what that does is it breaks down a lot of my barriers and my things that are blocking me. That roadblock is between the curtain and the shower. And so when you turn it on cold, there's a lot of feelings that come into your head saying, "Oh, it's too cold. Maybe later. Maybe I'll turn on warm first, and then I'll go to cold." But when you break that barrier and you go through, and you have that trigger that snaps you out of the state into a state of empowerment, it just totally changes the game, and it helps myself break through that roadblock.
So with the laying on the couch thing, I've been there with the doubts creeping in, and you're like, man, is this for me? What am I doing? I remember early on when because I wasn't going to work in the very beginning or actually still not going to work, but being in the afternoon, like the early afternoon, and I'm sitting here editing audio for a 5-day-a-week podcast that was making $0.00 and costing me, well, if you add my time into the equation, almost infinite amount of money.
Yeah.
But the point is like, okay, I'm sitting there in the afternoon. It's like, what the heck am I doing? I'm sitting here editing audio when just 2 months ago I would be sitting in my office, dreading the fact that I was sitting in my office. But it's like, it's not about the work that I had to do. With the editing of the audio, it's just like, what am I what am I building towards? I didn't even know. I didn't have a direction, and those doubts would, I would go and sit down on the couch after I ate lunch, and it's like, that afternoon nap that you wish you could take while at the office. Well, I was taking that nap. I mean, I was also staying up late and working well into the night in the early early beginning of the show, but at the same time, I felt guilty as anything taking that nap in the end. Like, even though it was only like 20 minutes to an hour, it just felt guilty. It felt wrong. And now I just have so many things going on. I can't afford to do that. I just got to keep moving forward. And I think for you, when you mentioned having that trigger of the cold showers, I've recently tried doing that same type of trick, though for a different reason.
Yeah.
I was reading about different ways to wake up where I didn't have to have like an energy drink to wake up. And if you take a warm shower or a hot shower like I do, or I think most people do, what you do is you turn right before you get done, you turn it to cold, back to hot, back to cold, and then you're done. The idea is that you end on cold, and when the cold water hits you, it wakes you up a lot. And by doing it at least 2 times, you get woken up, and you're like, right, I'm always ready to go after that. So, and then once what it is once I get into the mood of working, like I'll work for 3, 4, 5 hours just sitting at my desk, like turning stuff out. But sometimes it's hard to get past that doubt barrier and that, oh man, the couch is really comfy barrier. Or, hey, I'm taking this hot shower. It's 10 o'clock. Maybe I should just go to bed. I know I don't have anything to do in the morning, but if I hit that cold water just like 2 times, I can go for hours after that, like well into the night, and there are 4 or 5 hours of work can be done.
Yeah, and the triggers can be different, varying from person to person. It can just be something small as like a snap of the finger or a clap of the hands, or just smiling, just smiling really awesomely, looking at the sky, putting your hands up. It could just be a small little trigger, or it could be a big trigger, like how we do that cold blast in the shower, or maybe going to an actual gym and working out there, or running around, or just watching like comedy. It could be something.
Comedy. Oh, dude, you know what? When I was going through the worst times of working with my family, and I'd come home and I would just like yell for an hour, or not an hour. It's like 10 minutes of just like talking really loudly about how horrible my day was to my wife. It was like a reset button. I like turn on South Park or Tosh.0 or something else, and it was just like, oh, somebody hit the reset button, and okay, I'm ready to go about my night. But it's like an hour of decompression time that I was wasting, and I'm already getting home at like 6 o'clock at night. So now it's 7, and the night's already almost over because I got to get up in the morning and do it all over again. So yeah, I love that idea of hitting the comedy button or something where you could just kind of let your mind go into a creative space without having to actually do the work of creating.
And you have to watch out when you do watch comedy or some TV show that you don't fall back into that state of just passively listening, sitting on the couch, starting to feel lazy. Maybe we could set like a timer or something like that to get you out of that state, or just take a walk outside.
Yeah, I know that feeling. Like I said, when I would go to take that nap, I'd be watching something, and before I know it, it's 2 hours go by because I'm watching something. But it's a lot of self-discipline, and it comes with time, and it comes with wanting to get into the zone and wanting to get things accomplished. And when you get into that zone, like a lot of times, I won't even want to stop to eat, because I'm just so focused on, I got to get this done. Just one more thing, and you keep digging, and that you'll find when you start hitting those passion points for yourself that it can be really amazing what you're able to accomplish.
And another trigger I want to mention is, just saying something nice, saying something out loud that you're grateful for. One of these as you know right by now, I love quotes. Here's another quote by Melody, I can't pronounce the last name. So it says, gratitude unlocks the fullness of life. It turns what we have into enough and more. It turns denial into acceptance, chaos into order, confusion to clarity. It can turn a meal into a feast, a house into a home, a stranger into a friend. Gratitude makes sense of our past, brings peace for today, and creates a vision for tomorrow.
Oh, very cool.
And going back to what you said about goals, if you don't have anything to aim at, you'll miss it every time. It's by Zig Ziglar. And one big thing for me is just having, small goals and big goals in life, I think you're supposed to make goals for your family, for your business, for your career, and for other aspects in your life.
Yeah, you definitely have to have something to aim at. And even if that goal changes, it can be a constantly changing goal. It doesn't have to just be, I accomplished it and now I got to move on to the next thing. It could be something that changes with time, changes with perspective, right? Like if you were trying to start a blog and you write a bunch of posts, and you write posts for like a year, and the goal is to just have something that gives you an outlet, and by chance one of those posts that you happen to write gets picked up by like a Huffington Post or somebody big, a big website that has millions of eyes on, tuned into it. All of a sudden you're your aspect of success and what your goal, it can change at a moment's notice. And now all of a sudden it's like, well, I'm getting 10,000 hits. After a year I had 100 hits a day on my site. Now all of a sudden I'm getting 10,000 hits a day. Well, if that starts dipping down, all of a sudden your goal needs to change with that.
Yeah, and I totally agree with that. And so, switching goals is definitely part of life. And my goal like 3 years ago is totally different from my goal now, which is the relationship course. That's what I'm mainly focusing on. And the dream and the vision for that goal for the future is that first and foremost, my wife and I have gone through 5+ courses. We went to premarital counseling. We read a ton of marriage books and went to some seminars, all to prepare to grow our marriage consistently. And we want to have children that we can show that we have a loving relationship as a couple, and having that figure to look up to is just huge for kids. And so when they grow up, we want to be the person that they can look up to and ask questions to when they're seriously dating or when they're getting married.
Before we move on to the next question, I just wanted to say with one last thing with the setting goals is, one thing I've always done is set the goal low so that I'm not disappointed and I have a greater opportunity to be more pleasantly surprised. And some people might disagree with that, right? Because I would do DJ competitions. I was like, okay, the goal is to not come in last place. I'm going against 6 people in this round, and every single person has been DJing as long as I've been alive. So if I can not come in last place, I'll be happy with that.
Yeah.
And when I came in 5th, I was like, hey, you know what? There was one person that did not as good as I did. And again, I've only been DJing at that point. I'd only been DJing for like 3 years, and they've all been DJing for close to 20. So that's something that's like, hey, to me, that was an accomplishment. I made it to the second round. That was an accomplishment that I wasn't expecting, and you can build upon that. If you make it so, well, I have to win, I have to be first every single time. Well, if you don't, you're setting yourself up for disappointment. Then those doubts creep in, and then you need to start taking cold showers.
Yeah, you got to take it, one baby step or one baby goal at a time.
Andrew, what was your childhood dream growing up?
My childhood dream, it was actually to be a breakdancer. I was really into breakdancing for a little bit, and I wanted to be like this professional breakdancer for a while. I started this. Well, my friends and I started this group called Toy Soldiers Amplified, and we did some like little competitions here and there, and we started breakdancing. And it actually led me to another place, which was cheerleading, believe it or not. The cheerleading coach was a guy, and he was like, hey, man, he was talking to me and my other friends, my other crew members. And he's like, hey, man, I used to b-boy all the time. I used to break dance, and I bet you guys are just looking for girls and things like that. Well, the cheerleading squad has a lot of girls, and we can probably incorporate some breakdancing moves into it if you guys are interested. And so I actually joined the cheerleading team because of that. And that's where I met my wife, which is totally crazy. And, we've been together since then, and that's been like 8 years ago.
Wow. Oh, that's awesome, man.
Yeah, thank you.
Andrew, what do your dreams for the future look like?
The future, the dreams for the future would be, to have or to give my wife the option to be able to be a stay-at-home mom so that she can raise the kids and mentor them and parent them, to have a side business or a full-time business to go on there and, help others. And right now what I'm focusing on is the whole relationships course. I know there's not that many people that talk about it from a guy's perspective, and I want to really dive deep into those huge pain points that you encounter when you get married, like all the finances, the conflicts. I know there's a lot of conflicts in sex and money, in being there for others, maybe setting a family vision and things like that. And I'm just doing a ton of research right now so that I can become that expert in that field so that I can definitely help others with that.
Well, it sounds like you're well on your way to making that happen.
Well, thank you. Yeah. My wife and I have took some courses, and so I'm gathering all these information, and I'm currently going through a course on, how to create a course and how to provide the most value. I'll start off, giving material for free, just working with people. Maybe I'll start working with churches, with pastors, with counselors, just to get their take on it, so I can really dive into how I feel and how others feel about the first 1 to 3 years of marriage.
So, Andrew, is there any last thoughts you'd like to share before we share how people can connect with you?
Yeah. So the last thing I want to say is to just live every moment like it was your last and just live in the moment. So each day we should live life to the fullest. And one of the questions I have for you that one of my mentors says is, a year from now, you're going to be a year older. So what are you going to do? And that quote is by Ramit Sethi.
I always say, every day I get to live my dream is one less day that I have to worry about, at all. Because life's only so long. So I would agree with you. Andrew, I would love for you to share how people can connect with you.
Well, you can find me at andrewcamero.com on my website, or search for me on Facebook. It's just Andrew Camero, or on Twitter, which is Camero Andrew, because some crazy person has Andrew Camero, which is just it's insane. No one has the last name Camero except for me. But anyway.
You and everybody in your family.
Yeah. Oh, another interesting thing about me is, my name is Andrew Camero, and I don't drive a Camaro. I actually drive a Mustang, which is the competitor's car.
Well, Andrew, I've had an awesome time having you on. I would love to have you on again in a year to follow up on how you've been and where you're at on your journey.
Definitely, Joe. I'd be happy to.
Well, thank you again for taking the time to come on.
Definitely. Thank you so much, Joe, for having me.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of the Dreamers Podcast. Follow us on Twitter at Dreamers Podcast. Join us on Facebook at facebook.com/Dreamers Podcast. If you or someone you know would like to be a guest on the Dreamers Podcast, please send an email to j@jpar.co. This podcast is copyright 2014 by jpar.co.
Hey Dreamers, Joe here. I really appreciate you listening to Dreamers Podcast. If you'd like to find out how to support the show, please visit howtodream.co/support for all the ways you can help out. Thanks for the support, and please keep on dreaming.